Hello and welcome to the March or Die show today. Very special episode. I'm going to talk about it. Excited about our guest, excited about where I am. But thank you for joining the conversation. This is the show where every single week we do our best to give you the principles and perspectives you need to march when it would be easier to stay where you are and die. So many reasons to stop moving forward. And this show is about giving you the principles you need to keep moving forward. And I'm really excited about it. If you have not yet subscribed, go ahead and do that right now. Don't wait. Do it right now. Some of you don't get to the end. I can tell. You try to pretend like you've seen the whole thing, but you haven't. Subscribe right now. And that would be fantastic. You can get the content when it comes out. Go over to YouTube, look for March or Die, The March or Die Show. You'll find it. And subscribe there as well. My guest today is none other than Joby Martin. Pastor Joby, thank you.
Man, my pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm pretty envious. I'm sitting here interviewing you in your studio.
Yeah.
And feeling bad about my home setup.
Well, like I was saying before we started, talk to my guy Landon. He can make everything awesome.
Yeah, we've got an awesome studio in Texas, which I think Chad's tried to get you out to a couple times, and we'll get you there eventually.
Yeah.
But man, thank you for letting me be here, and for all that you guys do. I was at church last night, blew me away.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Loved it.
Thursday night,
loved it.
Yeah, and you got to hear one of our newest guys on our teaching team, One Mgatle. Yeah, he's from South Africa. We met through Acts 29. I preached at his church there, and we have a school of ministry here, and it's crazy the reach and the impact that God has decided to allow this church to steward. And so we're trying to do a better job of training up the next generation to lead and serve churches, and so One plays a big role there.
Yeah.
And he's also just a dynamic communicator of the gospel.
He brought it last night. So we're in Christmas season.
Yeah.
You guys are in a Christmas series.
Yeah.
He went to Luke 2. And so, I pastored for a long time. I preached a lot. So I just went, all right, I know where this is going.
Right.
Man, he brought it.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He brought it and did an incredible job. Music was fantastic, in spite of what Kyle Thompson may say. I didn't feel emasculated or anything.
Kyle's learning. Yeah, the crazy thing about our worship team is they're actually Christians.
Yeah, well, that's good too.
Imagine that.
Right, that's good too.
Yeah.
That's not every church.
That is true.
That's not every church. But
And now we have some godly men and women that are passionate about people glorifying God and worshiping Word.
Yeah.
I mean, to the person up there, man. They're incredible.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Hospitality was great. Everything about it was great.
Good.
And as someone who's been around church a lot, I know that's not always the case. So.
Well, anything we need to get better at, then you can just share that with me, and
I've got nothing.
I'll help make that happen.
I just taking notes and take it back to our church. You walk around a church like the Church of 1122, and you see all that God's doing here and all that God has done here. We're going to get into your book, and I'd love to talk about so many of the things that you spend your days and life talking about. But I'd love to hear your story. How were you raised? How'd you come to faith?
Yeah.
How does God do a work in Joby Martin to birth a church like this and all that's happening here?
Yeah, I often say, man, I'm just a nobody willing to tell everybody about somebody that wants to save them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a little hick town called Dillon, South Carolina. It's just outside of Myrtle Beach.
Sounds like a hick town.
It is, man. There's nothing there. I mean, we invented like the wide tire Camaro, the mullet.
Sure.
That kind of
thing. Yeah. Americana.
That's it. And I would have assumed growing up I was a Christian because I was Southern. So I believed in God and his son Jesus, just like I did the Second Amendment and SEC football. I thought it was a package deal.
Yeah.
I had a mom and dad that loved me a lot. They had a hard time loving one another, but that's their story. So our home life was kind of a train wreck, which led me to some serious trouble in high school. My story was a little, I don't know, it'd make for a good like after school special. Like at school things were going good, but
not at all.
I got in some bad stuff, man. And so I found myself in a lot of bit of trouble. And we had moved around a lot because of my dad's job, but a previous football coach named Coach Bull Lee, he ran this little Southern Baptist camp called Camp Pine Hill Baptist Retreat Center. And he brought me there, and I like cut the grass and was a lifeguard.
This was a coach at your public high school?
Yeah. But I had moved away, so I didn't even play for him anymore.
Okay.
And he's legendary in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a legendary player, and he didn't go to the NFL because he thought God's call in his life was to change young men's lives.
That's crazy.
And he didn't think he could do that for the Packers.
Yeah.
And now again, it was very different when so totally different generation. But that's what he did. He coached football as a means to a discipleship end. And so I was at this camp, and these counselors reenacted the crucifixion of Christ. So before there was the Passion of the Christ, these college kids from like Furman and North Greenville College and those kind of places, they just dressed up in togas and reenacted what the Bible says about the crucifixion, starting with Pontius Pilate. And, Pontius says, what should I do with this man named Jesus? And everybody screaming, crucify him, kill him. And they just acted out the cross. I mean, they did with the whips and the crown of thorns and crosses and the whole thing.
What's the age group of students there?
Ninth grade.
Yeah.
They did it. I mean, it was a very, very small little Baptist associational camp.
Yeah.
So every week, I mean, it started with like third graders, and by the end of the summer, it was up to high schoolers. And I'm sitting on this cross tie, watching this whole thing play out, and that's when it occurred to me, this was not a story like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. This was like an actual event.
Yeah.
And Coach Lee gets up and kind of gives his version of John 3:16. He's like, for God so loved you, and I mean the you sitting right there, that he sent his son. And he points back to what we've just seen. Yeah. And if you would believe, and the language we used back then, if you ask Jesus into your heart, he'll come in and save you.
Right.
And then I think we were under contract to sing Just As I Am because we were Baptist. And so on about the 9th verse of Just As I Am, Coach Lee gets up and says, all these kids, I mean, it's typical church camp, man. A bunch of kids crying and praying and promise they'll never sin again and all that stuff. And he gets up and says, I think there's one more. And I was the one more. And I got up and prayed, and Jesus saved me. And I can't get over it. I mean, golly, I've told that story 10,000 times, and I just can't believe he would save me. So he did. So he saves me, and I come home, and things get worse at home. And then a couple years later, I end up on staff at the camp. And it was like heaven, man. It was like I didn't have to worry about what's going home or school or any of that stuff. And then one day, Coach Lee, again, man, I've got zero preparation in teaching the Bible or anything. And the kid from Furman up there singing the song, I Am a C. Remember that one? I Am a C, I'm a C.
I do remember that. I went to youth camp.
Yeah,
I remember.
Dude. And Coach Lee just leans over and says, hey, when that boy's done singing, you going to preach. And I was like, what? Like in 2 minutes? No preparation.
That may be the best way. Nothing to think about.
And I said, well, Coach, what do I talk about? And he said, you talk about Jesus, you talk about 30 minutes. Go. And I got up there and preached on John 3:16. Yeah. And when I walked off the little platform, Coach Lee put his finger in my chest and said, boy, when you teach the Bible, I see two things happen. I see you come alive, I see them come alive. And I was like, Coach, I'm never working at church. And there's no way. And then shortly after that experience and serving there a couple more years, I felt God called me to ministry. And so I just got accepted to med school at the Medical College of Virginia, had a seat there, took my MCATs, did all that. And then didn't go and surrendered to a full-time vocational call to ministry. And I did student ministry for about 15 years. And it was very strategic. I was never trying to do that in order to do another thing. I had just read these statistics that 85% of people that come to Christ do so before 18. And I thought, old people are stuck in their ways. They don't know what's, I can't help them.
Yeah.
And kids so if I could just work with this group, you take 12 teenagers, you change the world.
But unfortunately in church, a lot of youth pastors, children's ministers, it's viewed as some kind of a hierarchy.
Yeah.
I need to start there. I have this, my wife and I we have 4 kids. I have 2 teenage kids and 2 adult kids. And so we've had this conversation 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. Why do we take the least qualified communicator, leader, whatever, and give them to our kids?
Yeah.
And then take, it's strange that it's done that way, but it is most effective when someone has a call to youth ministry.
So I thought I would do that forever.
Yeah.
And I thought I did not want to take the demotion of being a leader, senior pastor.
Right.
I also didn't want to gain that much weight and, wear Dockers and stuff. So, and then, in 2000, we moved to Jacksonville and I worked for Beach Church, which is right down the road from here. And I was the youth pastor there. Just having our kids were born there. It was so awesome. And my pastor's kids were all involved in our student ministry. I hired his wife to run all of our worship stuff. Yeah. It was like a family affair. And then his family kind of we were newly married. We'd been married 6 months when we moved here. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And
it all figured out.
Dude, I moved my wife. I met and married my wife 30 minutes from the bedroom she grew up in. And I was like, let's move. First, we moved to Athens, Georgia, and then we moved here. You know, so I guess we've been married a few years by the time we got here. But my pastor, Pastor Jerry Sweat, is just the godliest man I've ever met in my entire life. Mm. And so he encouraged us to start a service to kind of reach that gap generation. We had a ton of teenagers at the church and all of their parents.
Okay, right.
And he said, why don't you do a service to kind of reach that gap? And I was like, all right, I can't do anything a little bit. So I need the full reins.
Right.
And I also don't want like a young adult service. That makes me so nervous. Like, just a room full of 20-year-olds, the amount of ignorance in one place is just terrifying. So I went to our church and asked all the old people to come be missionaries at their own church, because what that generation actually wants is grandparents. Mm. And then God just breathed on it.
Yep.
And the reason we call it 11:22 is that's what time the service started.
Right.
And I just let's just call it that. I'm not creative at all. And then God breathed on it. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
And within 18 months, our service was in 4 or 5 services and had outgrown the church that we were a part of. And then Pastor Jerry came to me and said, you should plant a church. I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
And I mean, you think about this, the number of senior pastors that would go to the youth guy that built this thing and say, that's neat, let me have it.
And to say plant a church in the same town.
Dude.
I mean, pastors do that, but they say
3 miles away.
They say, hey, you need to plant a church. There's a state over there that could use you.
A lot of lost people in Boston.
Right.
Try that.
Right.
And so not only that, but he let us live at his church for a year and a half.
Incredible.
While we raised money, got volunteers, yada, yada, yada. And then we launched here. We renovated an old Walmart and moved in, and God just blew it up. And I mean, you've been to service. We sing and talk like everybody else.
Right.
But the Spirit of God's here.
Yeah.
And we preach the Bible.
Yep.
I mean, we just preach the Bible.
Yep.
And try our best to just do what it says. And maybe another thing that we had deep convictions about, our vision here at 1122 is that we're a movement for all people to discover and deepen a relationship with Jesus. So whether you've been a Christian for a long, long time or you don't know the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, great. I think a healthy church, it's reaching lost people and it's discipling people to live sent lives, and it's not either or.
Right.
It's both and.
Right.
And so that's what we try to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then God's been, I mean, for sure, that verse in Ephesians, he is doing immeasurably more than any of us ever hoped or imagined in the church.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love the team I get to work with. My son's on staff here now, just like he sets up the chairs. I mean, it's not like he's, but my daughter interns here in our student ministry. My wife led worship for a long time. Now she writes devotional material for our church. And we just not only do I love the people that I get to serve here, but also the people I get to work with are just the best.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So that's what's going on, man.
That's it. Go back to you accepted Christ.
Mm-hmm.
You preached a message. He said, essentially, you've got the call of God in your life. This is what you need to do. But you didn't go back to a home that supported that.
At all.
Is that fair?
They weren't against it.
But they weren't, your dad wasn't discipling you.
Never.
None of that was happening.
I led my dad to Christ about 5 years ago.
So what happened when you left that camp and came home that allowed you to continue to grow, to learn, and eventually get back to the camp on staff and then do the other things that you did?
Man, thank God we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, I lived a complete duplicitous life. I loved Jesus and was on fire for him.
Sure.
But my biggest struggles were the things that would just disqualify you if anybody knew, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, man, not everybody checks the sanctification boxes in the same order. You know what I mean? And so, right. But one of the things that I just knew is I had to be. Coach Lee used to say this all the time: "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future."
Yeah.
And so I just got heavily involved in Fellowship of Christian Athletes on campus, and I got heavily involved in the youth group at a church and I played a lot of sports, and so. There was a girl who was a trainer for the football team.
Sure.
And her dad was the pastor of his Presbyterian church. And so that's where I went. And so, over time, by the power of the Word of God and the Spirit in me, God began to chisel away some things that need to be gone in my life. But it was mostly, I just went full on into surrounding myself with the people that I wanted to be like.
And that was just you. You just realized,
yeah, I
need to have the right people around me.
Yeah, I went up and I just got involved, even though nobody else in my family was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. It's funny because we often look at the discipleship process, right? Churches, we like a process for everything. And so it's like, well, we got a discipleship class. I'm not against any of those things. In fact, I think they're helpful, but discipleship really is getting around the right people, getting in the Word of God, letting the Word of God get in you,
What's
and then
crazy
living
is,
that out and walking that out.
Yeah, we have what we call a discipleship journey here. Yeah. And the question that we always ask is, what's your next step of obedience?
Yeah.
Because it's not always a linear progression.
Right, sure, of course.
But it's pretty much everything that we do here, it's really based on two things. It's based on John 2:5. So Jesus is at the wedding of Cana, they run out of wine. Mary comes to Jesus and is like, hey, they ran out of wine. And he goes, what's this got to do with me? And then Mary gives, I think, the best advice of discipleship in the whole Bible. The servants are standing there, and she just says this, do whatever he tells you to do.
Do what he tells you.
Okay, so we consistently ask people, evaluate your life, your walk with Christ, your season of life, and what is he telling you to do next? What's your next step of obedience? Almost everything we do is helping people get around, doing two things, helping people develop some spiritual disciplines is what historically the church would call it, and being around the right kind of people. That's in disciple groups, small groups. That's in going on mission trips. That's in serving.
Yeah.
But that's just what we're trying. Way more is caught than taught.
That's good.
Way more is caught than taught.
That's good. That's good. When someone comes through one of our Mighty Oaks programs, we often say that on the other side of that 5 days, it's like a camp high, right? We have about 70% of people that attend one of our programs make a profession of faith for Christ during that week. And it's amazing what happens. Absolutely amazing. But we ask them to do 4 things. There's a lot we'll help you with. We'll resource you. We've got a lot of people who will speak into your life, but you need to do 4 things if you're going to carry this forward. You need to do 4 B's. Be in the Word, be in prayer, so hearing from God, speaking to God, be in community. You have to get in a community of believers, get in a local church, and then be in contact with we'd say corner man, but your mentor, someone who can directly speak into your life, someone you've given permission to. And you take those last 2 away, you can be in the Word and in prayer as much as you want to. But if you take away the influences that God potentially will put into your life, man, you're not going to make it. Yeah,
we're saying the exact same thing, just a little bit of different words. Yeah. But listen, dude, I've read every discipleship book you can. I mean, I am responsible to stand before the Lord one day.
Yeah, yeah.
And the mandate is to make disciples.
Yeah.
Not big crowds, that's the mandate, right? And it pretty much just boils down to these 3 things. You got to be in God's presence, God's word, with God's people.
That's it. Yep.
That's it. And so that's what we build it around. And dude, those moments matter.
Yeah.
I think the problem with adult discipleship is adults quit going to camp.
Sure.
Because, I don't care how sweet the service is. Man, an hour and a half a week, it just isn't enough.
Yeah, getting away.
Yeah, if you can turn down the noise of this world.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So we build a whole bunch of stuff here around trying to get adults to camp.
Well, that's what you were saying before we started, I think. Taking people hunting, getting people away from here.
Yep.
Because that's an opportunity to share the gospel.
Yep, 100%. And so whether that's a mission trip or a hunting event or conferences, but that really is.
It's camp.
We do this thing in the fall called Saturated, which is just a way, we just bring camp to our church. It's from Wednesday night through Sunday. Yeah. We just, old school, we'd put a tent out there and call it a revival. But that's just what it is.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, along the way, you have become known for a lot of things. Excellence in your church, your media ministry. I think probably the thing, at least in my world, you're most well known for is your preaching and teaching on men, manhood, what it means to be a man, the process of that. Your new book, Stand Firm and Act Like Men, just out.
Yeah, October it came out, yeah.
And I want to talk about the book. Before we get to that, though, why is that important to you, or when did that become important to you? You went from youth ministry, doing those things you're doing, young adult ministry, starting a church, all the rest of it. And at some point, that all coalesced into, I've got to focus on men.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to align myself with the created order that God had in mind when he made this whole thing.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, when men do what men are supposed to do, when men lead and love well, everyone flourishes. And I saw it over and over and over in my student ministry days. You know, when dads did what they were supposed to do, things were just better for everybody.
Right.
When men in the church do what they're supposed to do, things just go better. In my experience, I'm 52 years old, okay? So the church hasn't really been a place for men for the last 50, 75 years, right?
Mm.
In fact, one of the illustrations I use that gets me murdered online, so I'll make sure I say it for those in the back who hadn't heard it yet.
Good.
Is oftentimes the church has asked men to just honestly come in and be women.
Sure.
Like, just be nice, sit down, be quiet. We're going to sit in circles, talk about our feelings, and we're going to, you know, put a dress on and sing songs. And dudes are like, I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't blame you, bro.
Yeah.
And the illustration I use is if I go home today and my wife has one of her shirts on, she looks great. If I have one of my shirts on, I look fine. I can't do great. This is all I have. If she has one of my shirts on, which is almost always like a snap button denim or flannel, she looks great.
Right.
If I have her shirt on, it's not great.
Not so great.
And the church has been a blouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do not want to overcorrect.
Right.
And just try to have men around here beating their chest saying, you know, manhood is somehow about my big truck and big muscles and how loud I am. And that's what drove the book.
Yeah.
And I would say there's so many good men's books out there written by people exponentially smarter than me, okay? I mean, all of John Eldridge's stuff, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And Wild at Heart just changed me. All right, so good.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is rooted in psychology, sociology.
Right. It's not local church for sure.
Correct. This book, what's great is that when Paul writes to the Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14, I see that verse like, act like men as the hub of the middle of the wheel. And all of the imperatives around it are how you are to do that.
That's good.
And so all this book does, it's just a big Bible study on what it means to act like a man in regards to what the Bible means.
Yeah.
And so there's this old Scottish proverb, I quote it all the time, for every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch. And honestly, the enemy does not care which ditch you wreck your truck.
That's good.
The previous 4 or 5 years, a lot of men, especially young men, kind of wrecked in the ditch of abdication. I'm not going to take responsibility.
Right.
All right. I'm just going to sit on the couch, play video games, and vote for people to pay for me to do this.
Right.
What it seems like, especially recently in the last year, the pendulum is swinging too far the other way. There's like the return of the alpha male, right?
Yep.
But the problem is it's like domineering and aggression with abuse, and I beat my chest, and women just need to be quiet. Like, shut up, dude. That ain't it either.
Right.
So if you want to stand up and act like a man, you got to bend your knee to Jesus and do it the way he said do it.
Man, that's good.
Yeah.
It's, okay, so you bring up kind of the heart of my, I won't say trouble, but certainly internal friction with Christian churches, organizations, men, almost overcorrecting, you use that word, overcorrecting to the side of this hyper-masculinity.
Right.
Because there are a lot of guys who are hyper-masculine that are not spiritual. They don't understand anything about holiness.
Right.
They could care less really about what God thinks, but they find a lot of comfort in the hyper-masculinity stuff. And so it becomes just another facade that they can hide behind. And so I can be a Christian, I can love the Lord, but I can do all of the things that, name your influencer does.
Right.
But if I attach God to it, it's okay. And this has become problematic, I think. So, I'm not a hyper-masculine guy. I was a Marine Corps officer. I was in combat in Iraq.
Pretty masculine.
But I don't wear that, right? I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I run ultramarathons. So I do hard things, but I don't associate doing those things with masculinity. But a lot of people associate all that stuff. So if you're not that guy, right? You're not an athletic guy. You're not wired that way, whatever. Well, then there's something wrong with you. And I think we have overcorrected. So I don't know which ditch is a better ditch to fall into.
Neither.
But I think churches have gone so far the other way that now we've alienated this other group of people.
100%. So often when I talk about this in the intro, I'll say, if the Bible says act like a man, you got to say, okay, so what is a man?
Right.
And I'll say, I'm a man.
Yeah.
And I love to hunt and fish. I got more guns than I have fingers. Got a couple on me right now.
Right.
I drive a big 4-wheel drive truck. I love SEC football. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
None of that makes me a man. It makes me awesome, but it doesn't make me a man.
Right.
What it means to be a man is, I get this from two places, the roles that Jesus fulfilled and what Paul tells the Ephesians husband's role at home is. And so a man is a provider or protector, prophet, priest, and servant king.
Provider, protector.
Those are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Paul tells Timothy, if a man will not provide for his family, he's worse than an unbeliever, right? Now, but that doesn't just mean provide food and shelter. Possums do that for their family.
Right.
We got to raise the bar a little bit. Okay. Protector. And honestly, all of us think we will do that, but we don't have the opportunity to stand out on the home front anymore and fight the grizzly bear from coming in the cabin.
Yeah.
So this means you protect your family, heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Prophet, that means you tell the truth. Priest was a person that tried to connect people with God. That's your job. And king, but I put servant in front of it because every man that hears king thinks he gets to rule. But king just means it is my responsibility to set up an environment where the people that I'm called to serve get to flourish.
Right.
That's what it means to be a man. Now, somewhere along the way in some Beth Moore Bible study, evangelical churches moved away from the idea that the Bible talks about with headship and said, well, the husband is the spiritual leader of the home. What are you talking about? Nowhere does it say that in the Bible. He's just the head. The spiritual condition of your family is a significant part of that, but he is responsible for all of it, not just part of it.
Right.
And so if I could boil it down to one word, it is take responsibility.
Yeah, responsibility.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I've said this a lot, particularly to like the guys that come to our programs over the years. You could be a 16-year-old kid who loses his father and goes and gets a second job to help your mom make ends meet, and you take care of the little kids and you do the things. You've accepted responsibility for your role, your position, your circumstance. That's manhood.
Correct.
You can be a 60-year-old guy who doesn't do any of those things, who's screwing around, who's doing things that are not productive. That doesn't make you a man, the fact that you're old.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Responsibility.
100%. And I think, this is not original to me, but I think, a boy will never step up and be a man until it is required of him.
Right.
So we can like crap on this generation all we want to, but I'm just telling you, if we needed all the 18-year-old boys around here to pick up guns and storm Normandy, they would.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't been required of them.
So, I was a 24, 25-year-old infantry officer sitting south of the Iraqi border in 2003.
Wow.
I had a platoon of 84 Marines. I had a couple almost 18-year-olds, so 17-year-old young Marines. They had gotten signed off by their parents, went through the process. They were there with us. A lot of 18-year-olds. I always joked that I was a youth pastor before I was in ministry.
Yeah, no doubt.
And in the middle of the night, we were told that it was time to go. None of us had ever been in combat. It's 2003. None of us had ever been in combat. None of us knew what the reality of that was. And almost to a man, performed with absolute excellence, with courage, because it was required of them, to your point, it was required of them.
Well, I want to say on behalf of me and this whole church, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you've ever put on the uniform, you are held in high honor at this church. Because of men like you, I get to do what I do.
Sure.
That I can stand on this platform every single weekend and proclaim Christ.
Right. Well,
because people like you.
Well, and it was an honor to do it. I'm thankful for it.
But we thank you. We do not take it for granted, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But the other thing is, and I talk about this in the beginning of the book, is for all of human history, until about 100 years ago, there was only two classifications of male. There were boys and there were men.
Right.
And there was some kind of rite of passage.
Right.
And we are one of the very few societies in the history of the world that don't have that kind of rite of passage. And so now what we have is boys trying to bestow manhood on other boys.
Yeah.
And it's primarily defined by how much you can consume.
Sure.
Whether that's money or clicks or likes or women or beer or whatever the thing is.
Right.
But it takes a man to tell a boy, it's time for you to grow up and be a man.
You have to produce.
We need more of that.
That's good.
And, like when a knight was knighted, first he had to bend his knee to the king. And then he was given a commission. And then when he stood up, he was different. And so we need more of that in the church. And so a big part of what we're trying to do around here when we're calling our church to stand firm and act like men is not just crap on this upcoming generation, but be in their corner, stand on the wall, fight for them, speak into them, call them up into manhood. Because Peter says his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness.
Yep.
My version of that is, if it's God's will, it's God's bill, right? So it was God's idea that you would be a man. And so if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, the Spirit of God is in you, and in you, with his help, you have everything it takes to be what he has called you to be. And so if it was his idea for you to be a husband and a dad, then with his help, then you have what it takes with his help to do what he's called you to do. I don't want to just beat up this upcoming generation. I have a 20-year-old boy, young man. And my job is to help call him up into that responsibility. And the problem is, we live in a world that spends $1 billion a day. Honestly, his whole life, he's been told he's the problem. He's a white Christian male. What does he do? Right? Now, there's 1 million voices online right now overcorrecting, saying some terrible, not Jesus-loving things at all. And what I'm trying to do is anchor the word of God so deep in his heart and call him to what God has called him to do.
When you talk about bestowing manhood, can you refine that a little bit? What does that mean practically?
Well, so what happens is somebody like Eldridge writes incredible books about manhood, and then all these guys in churches do these rites of passage. And then like they take their 13-year-old kid on a camping trip and give him a sword, and they're like, "You're a man. You're not a man.
You're a 13-year-old kid with a sword."
Right, dude. You have to ask to pee at school. What I try to do with my boy is, beginning in the 9th grade, and we continue to do this now, we do some like epic adventure kind of trips. Because moments matter. And I want these moments for him. Ours were either adventure trips or hunting trips, and they just escalated over time. So this, when he graduated high school, we went to South Africa on a bow hunting trip. And I had a tribal chief there, like pray over him. I always included some men that had been pouring into his life to write some letters of encouragement to him, to call out that man that was in him. And so this thing was a long process, not just a singular event.
That's good.
And I'm telling you, we have a ministry here we call it 1825. You know, a lot of churches might call it like college and career or something like that. And this is not Youth Group 2.0. This is to try to help that generation find their place in the Great Commission. And the thing that makes it magic, I mean, we got thousands of these young people showing up, okay? But what we do all summer is we partner them with our senior adult ministry. And at every table, there's senior adults and there's 18 to 25.
That's good.
And we're just trying to get as much cross-pollination in that. Now, that ideally happens first and most at home. But we live in a broken society. So where the ideal is unrealized, grace abounds. And this is where the church family needs to step in and help manufacture some of those relationships. In fact, right this second, my 20-year-old son is having lunch with his youth group leader that he met when he was in the 6th grade.
That's awesome.
Right. And that guy, Josh, is a man. Loves Jesus, you know, got a beautiful family, he's a member of our church, all that kind of stuff. And that guy, Josh, has walked with my son. So it's not just dad saying the things dad says, but I've also surrounded him with other men to try to speak life into him and call him to what God has called him to.
Man, that's awesome.
That's where Eldridge crushes it. When he's talking about all of us have this, you know, a beauty to rescue, a battle to fight, and an adventure to live.
That's good.
That
process is a long process, and you know, you just mentioned that important key of having other men. Something's been on my heart a lot lately. In fact, I just talked to our team at Mighty Oaks last week about this, is producing content where older men, I'm 49, you're early 50s, so our generation of guys can speak to what is missing in a lot of young men's lives. Because I do think they're looking for something. I think they're trying to understand this world and understand their place in the world. But men in our generation, it seems, are either so embarrassed or ashamed of their own past that they're not willing to step into someone else's life, or they should be more embarrassed and ashamed of where they are right now, and yet they think they have something to say to young men. And so it's finding those mentors, call them what you will, to speak into those lives. How important is that, and what would your word be to men kind of in our generation that are not doing that?
The beginning of the gospel is you realizing you ain't got this. Pete Carroll in the locker room at, I think it was when he was at Seattle. One of my Mac carriers is a guy named Jeff Kopp, played 6 years in the league. and is one of the pastors here and one of my best friends on the planet. He said, Pete was yelling at him at halftime, and he says, the 3 most dangerous words that can come out of your mouth is, I got this.
Yeah.
And he was talking about football.
Yeah.
He was like, linebacker, if you don't realize you're a part of a team and you just go off on your own, you got to understand you got men on your left and right, and you need each other for us to win the game. And I thought, man, what a beautiful picture of what God has called us to as Christian men. So Jesus says at the beginning of his teaching ministry in the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like when you realize I'm spiritually bankrupt and I ain't got this, you're perfectly positioned to bend your knee to Jesus and turn the reins over to him. Okay. And then when the Spirit indwells you, now what Peter says, hey man, with Christ in you, you got everything you need for everything he's called you.
Yeah.
Both of those things are simultaneously true. So when I'm encouraging men to get in the game for one more generation, I just put it this way. What if you, when you were 16, had the you now speaking into your life? How would your life be different? Well, why don't you go do that for some of our kids?
Yeah, that's good.
That's it.
That's good. My son is, I have 4 kids, but my son is 24. He's a police officer in town. He started training jiu-jitsu when he was 12, and there were a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons was I was kind of at my wit's end with him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to do with him exactly, but I knew I needed to get him around someone in an environment that could basically say the same things I was saying, but he'd listen to them.
And beat him up.
And hold him accountable and someone who exhibited or demonstrated manhood. I was introduced to a black belt in jiu-jitsu who lived in our town and was in a great gym. And so I dropped him off there. He was homeschooled, so he went from going to class to spending half the day there. He'd go to all the classes. Mauricio Alonso was his first instructor, first professor. And that guy, I mean, he spoke into his life. Christian guy, spoke into his life, held him accountable, pulled him close, brought him to adult classes later in the day so he could be around him. And, there are a lot of things I think we did right as parents, a lot of things we did wrong, but I think that was a pivotal moment in my son's life where someone began to pour into him and mentor him. We didn't call it that, but got him on a track that now allows him to do the things that he's able to do now and be a Christian husband, Christian father.
And he had great respect for that guy.
Tremendous respect.
Physical sense that would translate. Same thing, man. My son trains MMA. Honestly, he'd really love to fight in the UFC. He trains at 10th Planet here under an incredible black belt. And that guy is like a servant at our church. He was on the greeting team.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know 10th Planet guys could be Christians. I didn't think they had it in them.
I didn't. Dude, this guy, they run Bible studies out of 10th Planet.
Lots of leg locks and
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a nasty system they run.
Yeah.
But same thing.
But having those guys in, and then over time, finding other people as he got older and went to different places. He told us when he was like 13, I want to be a police officer. And I'm like, all right, well, if that's what you want to do, we're going to find some people. I can't help you with that.
Right.
But we're going to find some people that can. And we were able to find some people that could. And man, it's the difference, I think, between success and failure, or at least going through that dark valley where you're trying to figure things out for 10 years as a 20-something.
Well, there used to be this phrase, it takes a village to raise a kid or whatever. Well, you don't want the village to raise your kid today. You have a village idiot. But it takes a church, man.
Yeah, it does.
So, and what I had to say as a dad is, I ain't got this.
Yeah.
I need help.
Yeah.
And so I would recruit, especially... Like there's a couple of Jaguar players that are just incredible believers that attend this church, and I know them really well, and I disciple them and all that. And when JP was 8, 9, 10, 11, man, these guys were swinging by the house, picking up JP, taking him to striking class or going fishing with him. And in actuality, they were closer to his age than me. I mean, they're 23 years old, and he's 10, you know? Yeah. And so I will be forever indebted to those men pouring into my family.
Long term, to be a man that God can use, you have to have not only mentors in your life, but you have to have the right kind of people, right kind of relationships in your life. Can you talk a little bit about the danger of isolation? We talk about this a lot, but the danger of isolation and then the types of friends someone needs to have in their life if they're going to find success.
The way my brain works, I just think Bible verses. So, when Peter's talking to the elders in 1 Peter 5, he's talking to men, okay? Yeah. Because he says, all right, every man in the church should aspire to be one of these.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And then this very famous verse, he goes, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Yeah. We've all seen the Animal Planet. Yeah. Which one does the lion take out?
Right.
The isolated one.
Right.
Isolation is a tool of the enemy, right? In Mark chapter 2, this is the language we use around 11:22. In Mark chapter 2, there's a guy who's paralyzed on a mat. The reality is all of us one day will find ourselves on that mat, either financially or mentally or physically or spiritually, right? And this dude had 4 friends. Each of them picked up a corner of his mat and carried him to Jesus.
Dropped him right on top of Jesus.
You have to find 4 men in your life, and I call them mat carriers. My friend Kyle Thompson calls them Foxhole Brothers. My friend Matt Chandler calls them the King's Table, okay? The idea is, do you have these kind of men in your life that are willing to overcome obstacles to do whatever it takes to get you to Jesus?
That's good.
And then you need to deputize those men. You can't just assume upon them. You got to look them in the face and be like, I'm counting on you to be my mat carrier. Now, here's the crazy thing about that event in Mark 2. So they got to the house. It was crowded. They could have walked away. They didn't. They tear a hole in the roof. Everybody know. If you've been to Sunday school, you've heard this one. Jesus says he sees the faith of the friends and says to the man on the mat, your sins are forgiven.
Yeah.
You better, now listen, I know you can't borrow anybody's salvation.
Yeah.
But you better surround yourself with some people that have enough faith that when you get knocked down, like in Ephesians chapter 6, the put on the armor of God. Faith is called a shield. And in the phalanx, so like 300, when they would link up shields, one is they would put men in line and they would put family members on their right and left. Think about how hard you would fight in a war if your son was on your right and your dad was on your left.
Right.
And if and when you got knocked down, you had somebody and you could kind of borrow their faith for a little while to shield you until you could get back up on your feet. And Christian community is like a savings account. It's like a retirement account. If you wait till you need it to build it, it's over. And so you need to be pursuing that. That the local church is a great place to find that.
Yeah.
I know some of the guys that you're working with, the men and women with these unbelievable trauma from military experience. What you guys have created is a pond by which these folks can fish for their mat carriers.
Yep.
And that is so, so, so important.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm a professional Christian. I've been doing this a long time. And I need mat carriers just as much as everybody else.
Right.
Yeah. And they're identified in my life. The other thing I think is important, a couple of more things that are important. One is the conversations we have is, all right, if you were the devil, how would you take you out? And I need you to be honest about that with me so that I can ask you those questions.
That's good.
You know?
That's good.
Secondly, the dumbest thing I see happen all the time is, so you invite somebody into your life for accountability. And then the first time they try to give you some, you stiff arm it.
Yep.
You dummy. They didn't sign up for this. You ask them to do it.
Right.
So be open for the correction.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, one of the things I like the least is when people ask me to be what they would call a corner man or a mentor in their life, because I know there's going to come a time something hard is going to have to be said.
Correct.
And they're not going to be as accepting as they are at this moment.
Correct. That's why you better, proximity matters.
Yeah.
So my mat carriers are dudes that I'm around that live here. Yeah. I mean, listen, I have very famous, very gifted professional Christian friends.
Yeah.
But they don't get to see how I talk to my wife.
Right.
And they don't see my calendar. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've got like I mentioned Jeff Kopp, the football player. He's my neighbor too.
Yep.
And so he'll lean over and be like, dude, you're kind of short with Gretchen.
Right.
You know?
This isn't okay.
This is not okay.
Yeah,
you're not going to act like that.
That's good.
You know?
You preach and teach on this. One of the I guess, the questions, thoughts I had last night when I was sitting in church, even the title of the Christmas series is the
Real Men.
Real Men of Christmas. Yeah, I was going to say the Men of Christmas. Real Men of Christmas. You've been in a Real Men series all year?
Yeah.
Right?
Every year I pick like a focus or a theme for our church.
Right.
So, you know, one year was on prayer, one year was on worship, you know, it just depends on what it is. This year, for the entire year, at the beginning, the first full weekend of January, I stand up in front of our church. I hand everybody a vision piece. I say, mark this on your calendar. Yeah. This is what we're doing as a church. And this year, we're focusing on men standing firm and acting like men. Here's what's awesome. I got 0 emails from the women of our church.
Okay, that was going to be my question.
Godly women don't ask, what about me? Godly women say, how can I help? It's just true, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look at it. Do you really think the problem with Christianity is the women aren't doing what they're supposed to do? I mean, look at every church.
No.
Who serves the most, who prays the most, who worships.
We're told 70% of church attenders are women.
Correct.
Most Christian books are written to women.
The first group of people to show up at the empty tomb were women.
Right.
So I know Jesus is the head.
Sure.
But praying mamas have been the backbone of the church from day one. Okay.
Right.
In fact, I think if men would just do what men are supposed to do, almost all of the societal problems go away.
Right.
I mean, fatherlessness is number one.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
So the women of the Church of 1122 have just been discipled. They're in there going, go get them, Pastor.
Yeah.
How can I help?
Yeah.
My husband needs this. My son needs this. That's it. That's it. Now, along with that, though, the entire series that we did, it was a 7-week series, Stand Firm and Act Like Men. My wife wrote daily devotions for all the women of the church.
Yeah.
Now, men and women read them, but she wrote them. She's like, all right, while Joby's talking about what it means to fight for your family, men, ladies, here's what it looks like for you to fight for your family.
Right.
So we're trying to disciple men and women here.
Good.
But there is not a godly woman that would argue that if her husband wasn't walking in a manner worthy of the gospel, that everything goes better.
Right. We're living at a weird time in, I don't know if it's, I think it's a weird time in Christianity. I don't know if it's unusual, I guess, but it goes back to Genesis chapter 3, where God tells the woman that she will try to usurp the authority of the man.
Correct.
But I think we're seeing it in ways that it's become acceptable in the Christian community, in the Christian church, where there's almost a Christian feminism that is not off there anymore. It's mainstream now. And yet, I sat in a service last night. I don't know how many people were here, but the auditorium was full. You had other campuses around the city. That was a Thursday night.
Yep.
Sunday, you're doing that 12 times, 10 times.
Yeah, over and over and over. Yeah, at 18 campuses from
full.
Orlando to Brunswick.
And when I look around, I don't see 65-year-old women, although there are older women. I see, 18, 19, 20, 30, right? Young women who are engaged and are excited and are learning. What's different, if there's something different about your approach to speaking on men, the role of men, that speaks to young women like that?
Well, we don't have a men's or women's ministry here. We have a church.
That's good.
And it's for men and women.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it, We have some events every once in a while focused in those areas, but we're just trying to disciple people. And oftentimes I will say, all right, ladies, I'm talking to the men, but you are totally smart enough to make the transfer here,
Right.
And even though the entire year is focused on men standing firm and act like men, all that did was help guide where the sermon series go. So, from the 1st of January to Easter, we just did 1 Timothy and Titus. Well, obviously that's for men and women, but the reason I picked those books is because Paul was trying to raise up these two young men to lead.
That's good.
And so that's it. We don't have women's ministry or men's ministry.
Yeah.
We just have church. We just make disciples.
Yeah, that's good.
And we have men and women in disciple groups, and we have men's groups, and we have women's groups, and we have mixed groups. And so you just decide based on your station in life,
where do you fall?
Yeah, what is God calling you to do?
That's good.
Yeah.
Stand firm, act like men. I think this is probably, I'm guessing, a book that reflects a lot of years of prayer, teaching, understanding, engagement. Why now? Why did you write this now? The timeliness of books is always interesting to me, but what did you see happening right now where you went, I need to not just teach on it, but I need to put it together in a way that I can hand to people?
Well, anybody who's written a book knows that by the time it hits the shelf, it was like 2 years before that when it really started. And what I saw mostly there was men being blamed for being men, that they were the problem.
Right.
That, this idea that anything manly was toxic masculinity. And so the best thing you can do is just shut up and be quiet and maybe, feminize yourself a little more. It was just God's providence on the timing of when it came out. Like I said before, I think the pendulum is swinging too far the other way. And it's also set up for a book I'm going to be doing in 2 years from now. That's on the Song of Solomon, love, sex, dating, and relationships. And so if men don't get their act together first, you go all the way back to Genesis, that Adam was instructed to get his world in order. Think about it. He named all the animals before God was like, okay, your world is in order. Now I can bring one of my daughters into your world. And so a big part of what I'm trying to do for our church is get our men's world in order. That's good. Before we get to start. And the other thing is the publishers have been asking me to do Song of Solomon for my first book. And I'm like, I refuse to do that. All right. So the first one I did was If the Tomb is Empty. It's just all about the resurrection. The second one is Anything is Possible. Like, because of the resurrection, you can live the way Christ taught you to live. The third one was Run Over by the Grace Train. So these are just gospel, 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 gospel. This book is to set up men, get your house in order so that when I do write the relationship book, we're ready for it because this thing is bathed in the gospel. And I did not want to be known as like the sex pastor, the guy that's talking about love, sex, and dating all the time.
Right.
You know?
Well, there's the whole counsel of God, right? And so it's in there. You got to talk about it.
Correct.
But yeah, I love that order. Most people wouldn't start there, right? They would start with the popular series on sex and relationships or whatever. But getting your house in order first.
Yeah.
What do you hope someone will walk away with? They've read it, they've understood it. What do they walk away with?
Simultaneously, they would know, man, I can't pull this off on my own.
Yeah.
I got no chance of doing this. So I better bend my knee to Jesus.
Yeah.
And like I've said 100 times, when I'm filled with the Spirit of God, there's nothing that's impossible. So if God's called me to it, then he will provide a way for me to accomplish it.
Yeah.
That's it. So hopefully there's a lot of challenge and a lot of encouragement. And I'm going to tell you, the butt kicker for me was the last chapter. That a lot of times when men do men's conferences and stuff, 1 Corinthians 16:13 is very, very popular verse. And they leave out verse 14, but it's a part of it. Verse 14 says, let everything you do be done in love.
That's good.
So the fighting stuff, dude, I'm all for it.
Right.
Be strong, I am strong, okay? The be a man, no problem.
Right.
The, be alert. No, I got that. And then I read that last verse, let everything you do be done in love. And you don't have to guess what Paul means. You just back up 3 chapters in the same book. And the Bible just says this is what love is. Yeah. It's not like love is like, and he tells a story, because love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, love does not boast, keeps no record of wrong. How about this? Love does not demand its own way.
That's good.
And a lot of times what you're talking about happens is men think they're tough because they're rude and they're just telling the truth and they demand their own way and they're right. And then in that context, Paul says, when I was a child, I acted like a child.
Right.
But when I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. And so men think by demanding my own way, I'm being a man. And Paul's like, nah, dude, you're being a child.
That's good.
Quit acting like a toddler because you think being tough makes you a man. No. You're acting like a baby. So take responsibility and let everything you do be done in love. And I'm just going to tell you that is the struggle for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I walk in my house, does peace walk in with me? Because what's crazy is in most of our lives, you get rewarded for the things that will kill you at home.
Sure.
Because, I imagine to lead Mighty Oaks, bro, I'm sure you're clear, a visionary, you got Bible verses, you do what people tell you to do, and they do it. And if not, you fire them and get somebody that will, okay?
Right.
Yeah, try to act like that at home. How's that go? And what we got to do is like shift gears.
Right.
And Jesus in John 13, to show the full extent of his love to his disciples, dressed himself as the lowest and served.
That's good.
And then Paul's like, so that's manhood. Not beating my chest because I make the money and if a burglar breaks in, I'll shoot him in the face. Okay, cool. You need to do both of those things.
Yeah.
But then you also better take out the trash and do the dishes and
That's good.
do whatever it takes to serve your family.
It's crazy. I always say that Philippians chapter 2 is the most powerful leadership verse or passage in all the Bible. But I tie that to Ephesians 5, where husbands are told to love their wives as Christ loved the church. Well, what does that look like? It looks like Philippians chapter 2, where who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery. So he knows he's God, never doubted he was God, but humbled himself, made himself of a reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, and died in our place on the cross, right?
Right.
So when we think about love, and this is that friction, I think, between masculinity and Christianity. We sometimes trade one for the other. We say, well, I can't be loving and be that masculine man at the same time. How masculine do you have to be to walk to a cross to allow your creation to murder you when you don't have to? He didn't have to do that.
He was doing just fine.
He didn't need us.
Correct.
And he didn't do it for himself.
Correct.
He did it because we needed him to. And that's that decision to love. That's what Ephesians 5 is talking about. And that's what love looks like. And to say there's a more masculine picture than Jesus Christ walking to the cross is to completely misunderstand the Bible.
We did a roundtable discussion about this book months ago. It just came out like on all the places where you can watch that, YouTube and podcasts and whatever. And I had some just incredible men talking about this book. It was Matt Chandler, Ben Stewart, Matt Carter, Drew Parker, country music singer, Jeff Foxworthy, Michael Waddell, Big Hunter, Tim Tebow.
Those guys will do okay.
Okay, right.
Yeah, they'll do okay.
Foxworthy was the godly sage among the group.
You don't often hear that attached to Jeff Foxworthy.
Bro, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And he said that, what a great definition of man. He says, men just do what needs to be done. So if that's change a diaper, you're a diaper changer.
That's good.
If that's take on another job, support your family, it's that. So it doesn't matter what the role is. If that's wash disciples' feet, then you dress yourself as a servant. But men just do what needs to be done.
Oh, that's good.
Jeff Foxworthy.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
And that's the picture of Jesus spending time with the kids. That's a picture of Jesus washing the feet.
It takes real security.
Yeah.
I mean, the only verse I have on my desk is Galatians 1:10. Am I now trying to win the approval of man or of God? Because for all the attaboys I get, there's quite a few detractors, you know what I mean?
Right.
And as I'm walking through the text, I mean, I'm the mailman. I don't write it, I just deliver it.
Yeah.
So like when you're talking about, women in leadership at church, who cares what I think?
Right.
This is just what it says. I'm just trying to do what it says.
Right.
So when you know who you are, and Jesus knew that he was one with God, but he did not consider equality with God a thing to be grasped or robbed. Or, when you know who you are, then there is no role too small for you. Like if serving is beneath you, leadership is beyond you. But if you think you got to flex for the approval of man, then you are out of step with the way Jesus says. It's just insecurity. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just blatant insecurity.
Well, and this is an issue, another area that I spent a lot of time pondering, thinking on recently is insecurity, and the insecurity that is in, I think, every man.
All of us, dude.
And we project it and then hide behind it and try to protect it.
What's crazy is ego and insecurity are actually just the same thing.
It is the same thing.
Two sides of the same
thing.
coin,
It's the same thing.
I was doing a sermon on anger, often misunderstood in the church and especially among men, right? And I think I'm stealing this from Tim Keller, but he said, the Bible says be slow to anger. It doesn't say no anger.
Right.
And it doesn't say blow up anger.
Yeah. It's be angry and sin not.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the first part of that is be angry. That's a command.
Yeah.
If there are some things that don't anger you, you were not in step with God. I mean, the list is long.
That's right.
All right. And then I think Tim Keller also said, or somebody's way smarter than me that's passed away that I read, said oftentimes anger is just expressing love through protection. Okay? So if somebody attacks your kids and you get angry and do something about it, it's actually rooted in love.
Right.
When Jesus turns over the tables, it's because he loved God and he loved people, and they were in the Gentile courts, keeping the very people that God established the temple to reach. So, they're making a mockery of God. And so what is he protecting? That's the question.
Yeah.
Is what are you protecting?
That's good.
And so holy, righteous anger is when you are protecting God's order, God's people, the glory of God. All right. Oftentimes when we get angry, what we're protecting is our image.
Yes.
And that's when it's unholy.
Yeah, that's good.
Like you made me, James 4. I love reading James because this is, okay, the Bible's over here. I'm making this up. Okay, but my take on James is like, all right, he grew up with Jesus. So, and he doesn't come to faith until after the resurrection.
Right.
All right. And so when he writes his letter, he's like, no stories. I'm sick of this, like, well, there's two birds on a hill. And, no. I'm just going to tell you like it is.
Yeah.
And in James 4:1, he asks a question, and here's how you know James is different. He answers his own question in the Bible. Most questions in the Bible are rhetorical. And he says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? And then he answers it, because you wanted something and you didn't get it.
Yep.
You put that, like when you think you're being the man, is it just, are you actually angry because you didn't get what you wanted?
That's good.
And you're demanding your own way? And James is like, don't do that. Don't do that.
And don't couch it in righteousness.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's happening a lot these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there are a lot of angry people, but at the root of it is not righteousness.
Yeah, the root of it is me.
Is me.
And then there's a lot of people that aren't angry at things they should be angry about.
Right.
And the root of that is also me too. Because it costs too much.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's good.
If I tell the truth in this situation, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah, that's good. Two different people sitting across from you. One is a young man, maybe raised a little bit like you, didn't have a strong Christian father, didn't have that type of influence in their life. I was super blessed. My dad, we never had a formal discipleship thing. My dad's was a pastor and a Christian, and he just took me places with him. Yep. So everywhere I went, I was learning things, right? So I had that, but a lot of young men don't. What do you say to that young man? Maybe he came off of a camp experience, maybe not, but he knows he wants to serve Jesus and live for Jesus, but the world is nuts. Social media is crazy. The influences around him are terrible. Even Christians are saying you can do things that the Bible doesn't say you should be doing.
Correct.
What do you say to that guy?
Well, first of all, I want to be clear about my dad. Even though we didn't go to church and he wasn't walking with the Lord until 5 years ago, I had a good dad. He was, in fact, from swapping stories with a bunch of kids that grew up in church, I had a better example of who God the Father was by Perry Martin than most people.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, he ran a tight ship, boy. I mean, there was no doubt about it. But here's the thing, man. He always showed up. He always took responsibility. He required us to do what was right because of our last name.
Yeah.
So when I was a teenager reading that God is Father, that made a ton of sense to me.
Right.
Like in every football game, I'd look up. He lived 3 states away, and he was in the stands.
Yeah.
Every wrestling match. You know how boring a wrestling tournament is?
Yes.
He went to every one of them, you know? And so to that, I would say, just because my dad, we didn't open the Bible and pray with me, he discipled me in what it means to be a man in incredible ways. I'm forever grateful. My brother is a police officer in the county below us. He's like the number 2 in charge guy. He's the director for the St. Johns County Sheriff's Department. There's a sheriff and 3 directors. He's one of those. We are where we are because we are Perry Martin's children. Okay. Now, if you have a horrible experience with your earthly father.
You don't have a Perry Martin. You don't have a dad who cares.
Then God is not the reflection of your earthly father. He is the perfection of what it means to be father. And God has a special place in his heart for the fatherless, okay? The reason it hurts so bad is because that person misused God's title. That's why that wound is so deep. And so go to the Father.
That's good.
Secondly, wherever the ideal is unrealized, grace abounds. This is why the local church, the primary type of language that the New Testament uses about the church is family. And in fact, Paul tells the Corinthians, you got plenty of teachers, not enough fathers. So just find you a father figure in your local church.
Yeah, it's good.
Or it could be a coach on a ball team, or it could be somebody that you meet at Mighty Oaks. But you, because of the blessing of technology, you can learn from a lot of people, man.
That's right.
And so you can surround yourself digitally. Also, there's a bunch of really godly men that have written some really great books that have been dead for 100 years.
Right.
You should read some of those books. You can be fathered, kind of like the book of Hebrews talks about. We are surrounded by this cloud of witnesses.
Right.
And in fact, if you're a young man, when you're real young, you can kind of pick a guy to mentor you. You really can.
Yeah.
As you get like into your 40s, you're probably going to need like 5 guys. There's going to be like a financial guy, a physical guy, a family guy, a spiritual guy, that kind of thing. So I think one of the great fallacies of our time right now is most people spend so much energy blaming their current condition on some other system that's not their fault. There's a major problem there.
Right.
What God has put in you is greater than whatever set of circumstances you find yourself in.
Yeah.
And if the tomb is empty, anything is possible, including you being the man that God called you to be. So take extreme ownership, to use a Jocko phrase. Yeah. Take extreme ownership of your manhood and invite some men into your life. Go find those people. Listen, the guy that, when I was I was a youth pastor at Beach, and I just started getting invited to the adult meetings. I was like in my early 30s. And it was like a finance meeting or something. And the first one I ever go to, I'm sitting there, and it's committee driven, and you know how that stuff goes at church. And I wasn't super pumped to be there. And there was a guy named Lars Peterson, and he was the last person to talk. And I thought, that's the smartest man I've ever heard speak. I mean, this guy is the smartest guy in the room by far. And I immediately walked up to him after that and said, hey, I'm Joby. He goes, I know who you are. And I go, well, will you take me to breakfast? And he's like, me take you? I'm like, dude, I'm a youth pastor. I can't afford breakfast, right? So I need you to pay for it, but will you do this?
Right.
And can we meet every other week?
Right.
3 years later, when we planted the church, he was the chairman of the board of elders, and he is still the most influential man in my life over the last 15 years.
That's good.
And I found him.
Yeah.
Now, I think it was my athletic background. I always loved a coach. And the ones that were hardest on me, I loved them the most.
Yeah.
And so this is a guy that I just went and asked, will you be in this role for me? And here's what's crazy. I knew the Bible way better than he knew it. I mean, I've got degrees in this stuff, you know? But I didn't know how to live life like he knew how to live life. And so you just invite people into your life that way.
Yeah. And believe that God has given you everything you need for godliness, for righteousness, to live the life that he's called you to live.
Correct. It's a war, but we won.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won.
Yeah. Believe it, though. Believe it.
Right.
A lot of kids, they don't get help because they don't believe it.
Yeah,
They're
if you
told how stupid they are, how untalented they are, how they'll never amount to anything. And so they just go, there's not a guy here who would want to help me.
Yeah, and just as Shady, you mentioned it before, is the guy that should be mentoring thinks, well, I mean, what do I have to offer?
What do I have to offer?
Are you kidding, man?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a very challenging verse is 1 Corinthians 11:1. Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ.
That's right.
Because here's what will happen. You start mentoring somebody, and the catalyst of accountability in your own life.
Right.
You're telling somebody else how to live.
Right.
It'll change you more than anything. You know why I know my Bible's so good? I got to preach it.
Right.
Every 4 days.
Right.
If I just read this thing devotionally, I might not ever make it out of 1 John and Psalms.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
But I got to know it because I got to train some other people in it.
That's good.
And then the other thing, the amount of times I'm discipling a young married guy and I'm telling him how to be a husband. Right. And then I'm driving home going, oh, crud, man, I better tighten up.
Right.
So actually everybody gets blessed. There is no one-way discipleship.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So that's the young person looking for direction.
Yeah.
What do you say to a young dad? He's got his kids. He wants to do things right. What does he need to have in his life, and how does he communicate down to his kids? How does he raise them up?
Way more is caught than taught. You need to spend a lot of time. Of course, you're teaching your kids one-on-one kind of things, especially when they're young, but getting them in the right environments is just as important.
That's good.
And probably the best thing is just be a man of integrity. So the word integrity comes from the word integer, which just means one. It's really rooted in the Shema. When a lawyer says, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? He quotes this verse, Deuteronomy 6:4. He said, the Lord our God, the Lord is echad, is the Hebrew word. And it doesn't just mean like number one on a list of priorities. It means like God is the page on which you would write your priorities. And then he says, and when you see God that way, when you know him, then you shall love the Lord your God with all.
Yeah.
Heart, soul, mind, and strength.
That's good.
And this idea of compartmentalized lives is a very Western idea. It was not a Middle Eastern idea. Jesus would say, you got one and only life.
Right.
And so do your kids see, is there like work dad and home dad?
Yeah.
And ball field dad?
Yeah.
And social media dad and at the party dad? Man, I mean, kids can smell hypocrisy like a fart in a car, dude. I mean, they're like, wait a minute, something's not right.
Right.
So can you rightly say before your kids, follow me as I follow Christ?
Yeah.
Because that will be that. And then this is huge too. This is from 15 years of student ministry. Love mama. I'm just telling you, what you want is secure kids. And nothing will breed security in your children like mama and daddy loving each other at home.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what we do is we got kids that are experientially rich and relationally poor. You know? Like they go on these great trips and they got a $450 baseball bat, which is ridiculous. They see 3 good pitches all season, but whatever. And they think, you know, if I buy them all this stuff, it's going to mean something. But yet if they don't feel that like love never fails kind of security at home, there's going to be some serious insecurity in your children.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive. One of the best things you can do for your children is never stop dating your wife.
That's good.
And look at them in the face and be like, we're leaving the house. Where are we going? We're going to your favorite restaurant. Can we come? You cannot.
You cannot come.
You cannot come.
Yeah.
Because me and mama need some face-to-face time.
Man, that's good.
Yeah, there's just a couple things.
That's good. Man, I could talk to you all day, but I won't.
One more.
Your time is valuable.
Pray over them. Pray the word over them. I pray Psalm 139:14 over my daughter every night, man, right? Because she lives in a world that says if you're not beautiful, you're not valuable. And I want her to know she's fearfully and wonderfully made, that God's works are wonderful, and that she's one of them, and I need her to know that full well.
That's good.
I prayed Psalm 1 over JP every single night when I was, tucking him in.
Yeah.
And And then what's going to happen, you're a dad, you know this, when they're little, they try to like manipulate that bedtime to stay up longer.
Yeah, they do.
Use it, dude. Use it. Some of the best conversations you'll ever have.
Yeah.
Try to have conversations about their heart, not just their activities. What did you do today is a question, but how did that make you feel? What's going on there? You're just trying to, because honestly, it kind of doesn't really matter when they're in the third grade.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is create the kind of environment as they get older, they're used to talking to their parents about these kinds of things.
That's good.
Because at one time in your life, you have total control.
Yeah.
And one day you're going to have zero control.
Yeah.
But you want to still have influence.
Yeah. That's good.
You know, your 24-year-old son, he can do anything he wants to do. But you want, when he's got a major decision, you want to be a source of influence in his life through relationship.
That's good.
Yeah.
You know, my wife taught me that more than any one person, how to talk to our kids about everything, and to do it intentionally. You know, the dinner table is very important to us in our home. I've got 4 kids. I've got two girls, 2 boys, and so those conversations get wild sometimes. Yeah. And there are times when I'm like, dude, can we just not talk about this right now? I'm like just trying to eat, you know. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
But my wife has always really leaned into those conversations. And when they were little, that was one thing. But as they've gotten older, that continues to be the place where, in spite of the craziness of the world, they're able to have, and to your point, it's because an environment was created. And I'd like to take credit for it. I was just along for the ride at that point.
But you were responsible for it.
But an environment was created where you can talk about anything that you want to talk about, and we expect you to talk about anything that you want to talk about. My kids go to, my 2 youngest go to a Christian school, and they do a lot of things that would make them a Christian school. They don't do a lot of things that I wish they would that would make them a Christian school. And so they have interesting conversations in Bible classes and those kind of things. And our kids are equipped to have those conversations and go deep on the Bible and respond to even adults who are teaching things that we wouldn't agree with in our home.
Correct.
Because of years of sitting around a kitchen table and just talking about stuff.
Yeah, we started, man, listen, you know how many family devotionals I've tried to lead? And they don't go good in my
I feel bad sometimes because I've tried like, hey, we're going to pray together and read this scripture together and do this thing. And we've done it over the years, but I think the devotional time has been, what's going on? Let's talk about that. What does the Bible say about that?
Which is terrible. I mean, I'm a pro at this. People pay me money and put me on airplanes to talk to rooms, whatever. So, and I would feel like such an utter failure there. But the best discipleship that ever happened around our tables is we just would go, what's your high and low of the day and week? And because everybody can say, here's something I'm into, here's something that didn't go good.
Yeah.
And because if you're wondering how do I get into that conversation? High-low is like one of the easiest things to do.
Yeah,
you know?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Where can people get the book, or where would you like for them to get it? I'm sure they can get it anywhere.
They can get it anywhere. If you go to, I think you can go to jobymartin.com and find out anything you want to know about where I'm preaching or what I've preached or books or all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And you 4 podcasts? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I've got one called Built for More. It's all about athletes and Jesus. The Daily Blade, Kyle Thompson and I do that together. It's just a 5-minute men's devotional.
That's
so
good.
Think locker room talk.
That's good.
You know?
Yep.
My sermons, 1122 sermons are out there. And then we do a podcast called Deepen, where we just do a deep dive into the sermon material that maybe didn't make it on stage.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
No, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time and your wisdom and what you're doing.
Well, like I said, thank you for all that you're doing to not just what you have done to put your life on the line for people you don't know like me, but also what you're doing to continue to put your life on the line for guys who have got men and women who have put their life on the line.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, but appreciate it. Thank you. For those of you listening, thank you for listening. If you're watching, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, do it right now. If you haven't gone to YouTube, check that out. Go to YouTube, search for The March or Die Show, and you can find out more information about us there. Appreciate it. Talk to you next time.